We take a look now at one of the most important parts of the Order of the Scales of Vengeance. The year was 5420. The Order of the Scales of Vengeance seek out the Werewolf Pack to battle Nosferatu. Pionis, Oathrender Greystone. The dead have taken over. Ferelden is under a sea of bodies. What shall we do? Pionis Oathrender asked. He, along with everyone else assembled, looked towards their leader, Glabba Heldenhammer. Glabba was a mountain of a man, and like the rest of the Scales of Vengeance, wielded a great warhammer in the image of his patron, God Tyr. Ilmater's Order of the Iron Will and Helm's Order of the Watchful Guardians have both been wiped out, killed by Nosferatu and his protege, Vlad. There is but one option left available to us, replied Glabba. There is a pocket of werewolves left to the north. While not friendly, they have also suffered losses, and if we can convince them to unite under our banner, then we may have a chance. A chance at what, Glabba? Our forces number only 57. We face thousands, said Pionis. And that damn purple light only grows in intensity. Do you not have the fortitude to fight in the name of our god Tyr? He who gifted you strength far beyond a mortal man, asked Glabba. Do not mistake my caution for cowardice. I will fight to the death if need be. I just want my death to equal our success, said Pionis. This is our only shot. We will travel to their den and demand their allegiance. Then, with or without them, we march on Nosferatu in Ferelden, said Glabba. With the rest of the Order arose from their seats, all of the Order of the Scales of Vengeance raised their warhammers in unison, shouting, Only the faithful! The sound echoed throughout the chamber. As one, they departed their chamber in search of the werewolf pack.
Welcome back to another episode of Power Word Nerd.
They had been strangely fortunate. The Order of the Scales of Vengeance had made it north with minimal casualties. Only 2 men had fallen, but each loss was a brother and weighed heavily on their hearts. Pionis stood against a tree ahead of the host, on the lookout for signs of the wolves. Glabba approaches his comrade, and before he spoke, a collection of howls were heard cresting the ridge ahead. With a glance, they both motioned silently for the others to follow. When they reached the top, Glabba and Pionis kept low to the ground in a prone position to overlook the valley. There they saw them, 200-ish wolf hybrids on 2 legs, surrounded by thousands of skeletons. The wolves were tearing bones out of left and right rib cages, burst as skulls were ripped from spines, but they were fighting a losing battle. Glabba stood, raising his warhammer, and screamed, Charge! Like a rolling thunder under the heavily armored Order tumbled down the back of the hill towards the enemy, the vibrations from their footfalls loosening the very rocks from the earth as they crashed into the back ranks of the skeletons, and like an unstoppable tidal wave, the Order trampled foes. Many skeletons' bones exploded by the sheer violent urgency of the charge. Pionis lowered his shoulder, crashing through 4 skeletons at once, the bones ground to dust under their heels. With each swing of their warhammers, a skeleton fell. Seeing this, the wolf hybrids howled and doubled their attacks. Pretty soon, nothing was left but dust and broken weapons. Glabba stepped forward, after the chaos of battle, and raised his helm. I seek the Alpha, for I would have words. A large, black-furred werewolf lumbered forward, his claws clicking together. Glaba noticed he was missing an eye from the fighting, and blood trickled down his face and into his mouth. But the injury did not seem to affect him. Mid-transformation, he began to speak. "My name is Argus, and this is my pack. You have earned an audience with me, but take care in the words you wish to break." He was now a normal man, black hair, clean-shaven, and now missing an eye. "I offer you vengeance and retribution. Nosferatu seeks to destroy your pack, as you have witnessed. I offer you a chance to destroy him. Join us and slay him yourself. Take up the cause of Tyr and unite with the Order of the Scales of Vengeance," said Glaba. Argus turned and looked at his packmates and let out a chilling laugh. He walked up to Glaba, whose hold of his warhammer's shaft tightened ever so slightly. "Why didn't you just say that from the start?" said Argus as he reached out his hand. The two men clasped hands in a firm shake, solidifying a promise of upcoming blood. Marching towards Ferelden, Pionis was again at the head of the column. Suddenly, an unholy screech filled the air, chilling the very blood in their bodies. They all stopped. Glaba yelled, "Focus, men! Be vigilant!" From out of nowhere, a Vargeist swooped down, latching onto Pionis' arm and dragging him up into the air. Pionis, unable to hold his warhammer, watched it drop uselessly to the ground. He heard Glaba yell, "Pionis!" Looking up, he saw the terrible creature that had him in his clutches. Once human, but now resembled more of a giant bat. A Vargeist was a vampire once, but decades of imprisonment change its body. The need to feed intensifies as they are changed forever into ravaging, bestial monsters. The creature looked at Pionis, who was clutched in its jaws. Seeing an opening, Pionis shoved his gauntlet into its open maw and grabbed its tongue. Unable to fly, the creature plummeted, screeching in pain as Pionis ground his fingers deep down its throat. Tumbling, spinning through the air in a deadly dance, Pionis was able to position himself to land on the creature as the Vargeist took the brunt of the impact. Pionis could see the wolves rushing towards his aid, but still far off. He pulled his body off the fallen beast and knelt in the muck. His left arm now hung uselessly at his side, maimed beyond repair. The searing agony crept into his body as his world devolved into nothing but pain. That's when he saw them. 5 zombies slowly approached him. He tried to move, but he only felt flashes of searing hot pain course through himself. He knelt there, unable to move as the zombies were only 10 feet away. "I am sorry, Tyr. I was not strong enough," he said. "I pray that the others succeed." In his voice he heard a reply that he did not expect. The voice of not Tyr, but Ilmater rang in his head. "I will take this pain for you so you may fight," said Ilmater. All of a sudden the pain was gone, and he felt brand new. And with that, he leapt to his feet, landing a front kick at the first zombie, his armored boot kicking right through the zombie's torso and sticking out the backside. Shaking the first one off, he whirled, dodging their outstretched hands. He grabbed the next zombie's head and twisted it in one hand, clean off, and used it to bash the brains of a third. At this, the wolves arrived and quickly dispatched the remaining 2, ripping their limbs off with their fangs. Pionis knelt again, breathing heavily. Glaba rushed to his side. "By the grace of Tyr, you are still alive," he said. "No, brother. Not Tyr. All the gods are on our side in this fight," replied Pionis. "Well, let's hope it stays that way," said Glaba. Staring at his arm, he said, "You know, you look more like Tyr every day." Pionus replied, "You honor me with your words, brother."
"And you honor me with your bravery,"
replied Glabba. As the forces of man and werewolf advanced, they were a mere couple of miles from the gates of Ferelden.
"So it has come at last," said Glabba. "Are you ready, Argus?"
"I am always ready," he replied. Pionus held his fist in the air, signaling for them to halt, his other arm still hanging uselessly at his side. Glabba and Argus joined him in the front. Pionus took it upon himself to be at the head of the march, always vigilant, always willing, even when injured. When they arrived, Glabba let out a gasp.
"What a monster! He will be killed! By Tyr, he will be killed!"
Through the pass was a small town, its ground littered with bodies. Bodies so thick you could no longer see the grass or the dirt. "We must move," said Argus. "Agreed," said Pionus, and he walked off again. The host marched through the dead citizens of Ferelden. This wasn't war. This was rage, or worse. Before getting to the end, they heard a laugh, and Nosferatu appeared out of thin air.
"Where do you think you're going?"
Nosferatu asked. The vampire, adorned in golden Egyptian-style robes, was emaciated, skinny, and his ribs shone under his vestigial robes. His fangs overhang his lips all the way to his chin, and in his right hand he held a staff made of fused human spines. On his finger was the ring of the damned. It shone a menacing amethyst light.
"Monster!"
cried Glabba Heldenhammer.
"You are judged guilty of your crimes, and the scales of vengeance will be more than happy to be your executioner."
Nosferatu hissed.
"You are no match for me. I have an army that does not sleep, does not eat, and if I command, it does not move."
And with that, the bodies of the people they thought dead stood and moved, beginning to grab at the warriors. Countless allied werewolves were dragged to their death. Although the heavily armed warriors fared better, eventually, hands dug into joints in their armor and dragged them down as well. Glabba raised his warhammer to the sky, channeling lightning from the haft into its head. With a mighty blow, he struck the mass of zombies, killing dozens.
"Pionus, kill him, and this will all be over,"
shouted Glabba. Pionus and a group of warriors, both werewolves and humans, charged at Nosferatu.
"Avada Kedavra!"
screamed Nosferatu. As he thrust out his staff, Pionus, thinking quickly, rolled out of the way, but the rest were not so lucky. A bolt of black energy slammed into the warriors, and the skin of men and wolf melted from their bones. Their armor clanked harmlessly to the ground. Nosferatu smiled, reached down with his hand, his ring flowing with purple energy, and said,
"Arise."
The bones of the fallen knelt together and reanimated. The animated dead charged at Pionus. He held his war hammer in his one good hand. Pionus Greystone had chopped the haft in two so he could still wield it. He leapt at the skeletons, spinning wildly, crunching bones wherever he made contact. Glabba and the rest of the order were finishing up dispatching the zombies when Nosferatu said,
"I think you need a challenge."
He raised his staff, and with it the ring flowed bright. The zombies began to move again, but not of their own will. They knit together bones and flesh, melding into one giant, hideous beast, comprised of hundreds of body parts. It stood some 50 feet tall.
"Argus!"
screamed Glabba. The werewolf turned his massive frame towards Glabba. Glabba put his hand on the werewolf's hide. Golden light flowed through him into Argus. Argus howled. His muscles bulged. He could feel strength enrich his body. Looking Argus in the eye, Glabba said,
"Throw me as high as you can."
Argus grabbed him and spun 3 times, releasing Glabba towards the monstrosity. Glaba flew towards the hideous creature. He braved for impact and at the last moment swung his warhammer in a vicious uppercut, knocking parts off the foul being's body. Glaba, about to fall back down, reached and dug his fingers into the rotting flesh of the beast's back. Arms attached to its back reached for him, but he swatted them away. Glaba glanced towards Pionis. It seemed he had dispatched the skeletons and was moving towards Nosferatu. Pionis strolled towards Nosferatu, his warhammer extended. "Your time has come." His sentence was cut off. As Vlad appeared out of thin air, the vampire clasped his hand around Pionis' throat. He pulled him in close and said, "You shall be my appetizer." Vlad tossed the warrior into the air, spiraling and smashing him into a tree. Now his spine was fractured, and the tree split from the impact. He could tell his injuries were severe, but he felt no pain. Bless the gods, he thought. He rose and ran at Vlad, swinging his warhammer with expert strokes. But Vlad deftly dodged each one. In a single motion, Vlad unsheathed his sword, swinging upwards at Pionis' head. Greystone was just barely able to bring his warhammer up to block the blow. The two circled each other, ready to strike. Vlad pivoting his left foot, bringing his right foot up in a powerful kick that struck Pionis in his maimed arm. Vlad stared perplexed at the lack of reaction. "I no longer feel pain," said Pionis, as he took this opening and threw his warhammer straight into Vlad's face, crushing his nose and knocking him to the ground. Pionis leapt onto Vlad, mounting him and letting loose a fury of punches with his good hand. Vlad reached up and pulled Pionis' maimed arm. With a sickening pop, the arm tore free from the socket, and Vlad tossed the arm aside, blood pouring from the wound, and Pionis' vision began to darken. But he let his rage flow out of him. He punched Vlad's face again and again. Suddenly, Vlad's form changed to a flock of bats. Pionis fell to the ground on his knees, despairing that his foe escaped him. Vlad had reformed behind Pionis and thrust his sword through the man's back and into the earth. Unable to move, Pionis stared at his life force oozing out of his chest along the blade's edge of the sword. "No!" screamed Glaba as he watched Vlad pull out the sword and Pionis crumple to the ground. Vlad turned and smiled at him. Glaba turned back towards the zombie beast and hammered his way through its body. He jumped into the hole he made in the beast. Bits of zombie arms and other appendages pulled and grabbed at him. Glaba focused his magic and anguished into himself. He released this energy as he screamed at the top of his lungs. The zombie monstrosity burned from the inside and melted to the ground. Among the blood and viscera stood Glaba, his armor steaming and glowing a faint golden light. Glaba rushed to Pionis' side, but he was already dead. His eyes stared lifelessly into the night sky. "Dear, I beg an audience," said Glaba. Around him, it seemed as time had stopped. Everything darkened, and a man walked out of the darkness towards Glaba. He was tall, clad in plate mail. He was missing a hand, and his eyes were cloudy like a blind man's. Glaba dropped to his knees. My lord dear, I pray for your aid. This weapon, Nosferatu is not mortal made. I seek only a weapon of equal strength to oppose it." Tyr's voices boomed across the countryside. "It has already been done. The forces of light have combined to bring you this." At his feet a ring, shining a pure white light, appeared. He grabbed and inspected it. The ring of light showed expert craftsmanship, sporting no flaw. On it were 3 symbols. A balanced scale resting on a warhammer, a set of hands bound with a cord, and a gauntlet decorated with an open eye. "Thank you, my lord. If I may, I have one more request," asked Glaba. "Speak," said Tyr. "When members devoted to you of the Order of the Scales of Vengeance die, may you transport them to our temple, so they may be buried in worship to you as much as they did when they lived." "What are you doing?" asked Argus. Glaba looked around and noticed things had returned to normal. Glaba held up the ring of light, and the dead warriors were bathed in a dazzling blue light. Their bodies steamed in an intense heat and disappeared into flakes of ash.
Welcome back to another episode of Power Word Nerd.